What is Microsoft 365? What are the benefits of Microsoft 365 for you and your business? And how could you look at transitioning to Microsoft 365? Today I'm joined by Scott Riley, the founder and consultant of Cloud Nexus, who's going to talk us through this in more detail. So, morning Scott. Good to see you. Hope you're well.
Yes.
Thanks everyone for joining us. We've got Scott from Cloud Nexus with us this morning to talk about Microsoft 365, all its capabilities, which is obviously massively important in the current climate, given the pandemic that we're going through. So Scott, maybe just to you for a quick introduction, really, about you and your background.
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm Scott Riley. I founded Cloud Nexus, which is a little boutique kind of Microsoft 365 and Azure consultancy business based in Leeds, in West Yorkshire. Set that up last year. I came off the back of working in kind of large IT service providers for the last 21 years. And finally decided, it's about time to kind of do something by myself, get going and help small businesses with their adoption of Microsoft 365, but also help, IT partners actually deliver a great service. And that's really where we see a lot of the work that we do is helping IT companies like yours, help their customers make the most of 365 and Azure.
Sure. Okay. And I think, in the last few weeks, how have you found that? How is that? What's the differences, the changes been? What have you seen from your side of things with the pandemic?
Oh, do you know what? It's been absolutely crazy. So we had this initial burst of everyone suddenly needs to work from home, and you had some businesses that were kind of ready for this. They already had kind of remote working in place or home working in place. I used to work with an organization that had 500 staff and 200 desks. So you couldn't have everybody working in the office at the same time anyway. So they were kind of, built and ready for this. But a lot of organizations have had to really quickly ramp up, quick get laptops out to people, get files off, the servers, get them into SharePoint Online, quick get our emails moving, put some security around that quickly. It's had to be a real quick move for a lot of people. And I think, for us, that's meant two different things. One is, help people get moved quickly, get mobile quickly. But the other, and the thing that we're doing more of right now is, hey, we made that move quickly. Did we put security in place? Is everything okay? Have we taken any risks? Can we have a sanity check of where we are, that everything's still safe, with what we're doing? So that's a lot of what we're jumping into now in kind of this next phase of everyone working from home.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of, so that's really interesting. I mean, in terms of sort of business continuity, then DR plans and remote working, how do you think businesses have changed their approach to this? Then, do you think people are looking at it very, very differently now?
Yeah, I think they are. So you kind of got two approaches to business continuity, haven't you? You've traditionally got this idea that, hey, if our office is unavailable for any particular reason, then we've actually rented a space over in this disaster recovery suite, and there's 100 desks with PCs sat there working, waiting for us. And the idea would be, you can't get into our building, we'll all decamp and go and work over there. We can't do that because of the social distancing. That plan is out of the window. So any organization that had that in mind, and there's quite a few of them, that doesn't work. So again, there's been this move to, okay, well, quickly, enabling home working. Okay, now we've realized that everyone's coming back into our office and the VPN's not up to scratch, the bandwidth's not up to scratch. We've had to tell people, can you stop using Skype? Can you log in from 6 till 8 and you guys log in from 8 till 10 and you guys are only going to be able to start at 10. So I've seen some of the large organizations, particularly one very large insurance company, have had to really kind of layer back on when people can log into the IT systems until they can get some upgrades in place. So I think it's really made people have a good sharp look at business continuity and disaster recovery. It's always been one of those things that's been on the risk register for people, I think, and it's, maybe they're taking a risk on it, they're taking a chance on it. What are the chances, something like this would actually happen? And then here we are, no one saw this coming, and everyone's quickly adapting. But, the good news is people are adapting. The IT teams are being given the room and the budgets to go and do this, get the business moving, get everybody working. And there's a real positivity around it. I think that's the great thing. People are really coming together to solve the problems, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make, really. I think the whole IT infrastructure piece needs re-looking at the same time as just remote working facilities, right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think, people have learned we didn't have enough bandwidth. We've got the wrong type of VPNs in place. We're not built to support everybody working remotely. I've seen an organization that was using Skype for Business, on premise in their data center, in their large head office, quickly just go, could you all stop using Skype, please? Because it can't keep up. Can everybody just use Teams? And that wasn't the rollout plan that they had for Teams. But there's always this discussion of, I want to move things to the cloud, but I'm not sure if it's got the right scale or capacity or capability or security. I need to play with it and try it and see if it works, because what I've got on premise, I know it, I can see it, I can touch it, I've got a good comfort factor. I believe in everything there, and they would rather take this longer migration period than just going, it's got to be today. That's what people have been forced into. And I would genuinely hope that it gives people this message that IT projects don't have to take 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. They don't have to take that long. And a lot of the time is taken by, and no disrespect to them, but a lot of the time is taken by the IT teams in-house. They don't know what the capabilities are in the public cloud offerings. They don't know it, so they don't trust it. But they don't have time to play with it. They don't have time to, demo it, do a proof of concept, roll it out to a few users and then roll it out and learn as they go. They're certainly not going out and doing courses and getting trained on it. So the knowledge that they gain is only done in the tiny bit of time they have left when they're not looking after day-to-day operations. Yeah. And that's where I think, they usually turn to, IT providers like yourself to say, hey, you're experts in this. Can you get us from A to B? But even then, that's only if the business has signed off on a budget, to go and do this project. So I think what this will have taught a lot of businesses and a lot of IT teams is that you can move quickly. There are businesses out there that will get you there, much, much faster than you thought it could ever be. And it's not 6, 12 or 18 months and a huge phenomenal cost to do it. The agility's there in the cloud systems. There's great IT companies that can get you there. Let's get moving. Let's not just be saddled with legacy ways of working, legacy IT, just because that's how we've always done things. And and we always think it takes 1, 2 or 3 years to do a big IT change program. We've learned that IT change can happen very rapidly.
Yeah, and it's an interesting points that you make, really. I think what comes with that, I guess, with the limited amount of time people have to learn up and educate themselves on this. I think there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, as well in the marketplace with offerings like Microsoft Teams. What are the sort of common misconceptions that you've seen or experienced from your clients and contacts around, some of maybe the misconceptions of Teams and what it's capable of? Yeah,
I think that probably comes to the wider conversation of what do people misunderstand around even Office 365. We work with a lot of businesses that have bought and paid for Office 365. They're paying for either on a big enterprise agreement subscription, which is 3 years long, or they're paying for it on a monthly pay-as-you-go type basis. But they're paying a good, somewhere between 10 and maybe 17 pounds per user per month for this Office 365 license, and their perception is, well, it's those kind of desktop applications and a bit of email, isn't it? There's the SharePoint thing that we don't really know what it does, and that's about it. Maybe they use Skype for Business, for messaging, and then they start to learn that you can do telephony with it later. But again, this comes back to those IT guys and the business leaders don't have time to sit there and understand what the capability of the technology is, because they're running their business and they're running their day-to-day operations. And I totally understand that. But let me just show you a quick slide, actually. If I can just share this, it might be interesting just for you to see. If you can see my screen there.
Yep.
This is what's in Office 365. So most people, are up here. They think it's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, a bit of OneNote, Outlook. These are your desktop applications. And then somewhere in the background, like I say, email works. You've got your enterprise email system, but they don't see kind of all this other stuff that it's capable of all the way around this wheel. And this is where we see people missing out on a huge amount of value because they don't understand that all this stuff's here. So they're busy paying for a lot of, other applications, third-party tools, to do a lot of the jobs that are built into the system here. And either, that is, well, we've always worked this way, or it's just simply we didn't know, we didn't know this is here. And so what I'm finding is actually working with businesses to help them understand, well, this is what you're paying for. You're paying for all this stuff. How do we help you, drive the most value out of it? And just to call out, and I always do, that this is not my graph. This is something from Kirsty McGrath over in Australia. She's the lady who's an MVP who puts this together to kind of showcase to people what we do. So I always like to just let people know she's she's the expert when it comes to that thing. But let me just stop there for you. But I think that the key thing is, they're not seeing the value in what they're already paying for, and they're paying for a lot of other solutions. That does two or three things. One is they're paying more than they need to, on a monthly basis for software licensing. Simple fact. If they're paying for other things like Asana or Rike, for doing their application planning or their Kanban boards, that's built in Microsoft Planner. If they're paying for things like WebEx or GoToMeeting, those kind of things, well, you can do that in Teams. We're doing that right now. Doing a live meeting and recording it for us to use later. All that stuff's built in. We can do subtitling. We can do live content analysis of this stuff in Microsoft Stream. Again, all that stuff's built in. Lots and lots of things that people don't understand. What it does, how it works, why it's beneficial. And so, the biggest change I've seen in a 400-person business, small business, was for them to be able to save £2,500 a month just in software licensing. And that's because they weren't using, they were only using Exchange Online, right? They weren't using the identity services. They weren't using Teams. They weren't using SharePoint for files. They weren't using any of those things. So they were maintaining a whole estate of on-premise equipment, other licenses, other maintenance plans that they just didn't need anymore. They were already paying for all this great stuff in 365 and just not using it. And that's only kind of the basic ones. When you get the more advanced plans with the security built in, there's a load of other third-party products that people are paying for. But
sorry, why do you think that is then? Why do you think that we've got clients out there that are and contacts that are using these? Do you think it's just a historical thing? And then the educational piece that you've already talked about in terms of not knowing the capabilities?
I think it's two things, actually. I think so. One is, maybe not knowing. When you get to the security side of things, I think there's a lot of historical mistrust. And I remember, as a techie, quite a few years back, and whenever you got a new Windows system, it came with an antivirus potentially, and you kind of went, I'm not using that. It's that's a Microsoft antivirus. I don't trust it. And it came with a firewall. When you're like, Windows firewall, I don't think so. I'll put a proper one on it. And so, we kind of had that mindset when it came to desktop devices and servers. Whatever the built-in security was from Microsoft wasn't good enough. They make operating systems and Word. They don't do security. And so we would layer on all these other products to make it safe. So antivirus, anti-malware, anti-spam systems, all these kind of things that we layer on, VPNs, firewalls, all that stuff. But today, Microsoft pump like $1 billion a year into the R&D around security. And when you go into those Gartner Magic Quadrants, they're in 5 different Magic Quadrants for kind of enterprise security, whether it comes to email or messaging or desktop antivirus. They're way up there in the top right, really leading the charge. They've come a long way. And I think there's still some reputational stuff certainly in some of the the older guys in the IT teams and people like me who've maybe risen to be IT directors who just still have that. I don't quite trust Microsoft when it comes to security. So we need to go to, Symantec or Mimecast or whoever it is to add these other layers on. But I think if you come back and do the research, if you stop, maybe you take that bias out for a second, just go, well, let's take a look at it, value for value, feature for feature, get some independent reviews of this stuff and actually look at it. The Microsoft stuff's really good. It genuinely is. And maybe it's good enough for what you want it to do. Maybe you've got some specific niche requirements because you're in finance or legal. And so there's some certain specific things that you need. But maybe it's a case of you just take the third party for those specific bits and you use the built-in Microsoft stuff for everything else. I would definitely challenge people to do that because you save on licensing, but you save on complexity, because when you have separate antivirus, anti-malware, anti-spam systems, separate identity systems, all these different things, VPNs, multi-factor authentication, none of those things talk to each other.
Absolutely.
So every time you get a new starter, your IT guy's got to go and provision something in all these different places. When someone leaves, the IT guy's got to remember to go and remove all these things. But God forbid you have a breach, because if you did have a data breach that came in, where did it happen, and how do I correlate all the logs from all these different things? Now people will sell you a SIEM system, something that ties all them logs together. Fine, but it's already happened. You've already been breached, and now you're trying to figure out why it happened. If you can centralize and consolidate into a smaller set of vendor solutions that actually talk to each other, you'll save time, you'll save money, you'll reduce your security footprint, you'll make it easier for your IT guys to admin and get it right. The whole thing talks to each other. You're in a better shape. You're genuinely in a better shape for you and your business data, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly what I'm taking from this is there's a lot to think about. There is a lot of complexity within it, but things really can be simplified. The IT infrastructure can be simplified. One of the things that have been in the press recently, then, Scott, is around this move from Microsoft, from Office 365 to Microsoft 365, which maybe for the for people that are looking at using this product adds a little bit more confusion. What is the difference between Office 365 then and Microsoft 365, and what are the changes that come with that change that Microsoft have announced?
Yeah, that's a brilliant and really badly timed question as well, because we did have a really clear steer, which was you had Office 365, which was everything I showed you in that wheel earlier, everything inside there, and then we had Microsoft 365, which was all of that stuff plus Windows 10 plus enterprise security. Okay, so you got these two additional features, and we called that bundle Microsoft 365. Yeah, dead easy. Now, I'll talk about that, because what's happened recently is they've renamed everything. But Microsoft 365, think of it this way: it's your Office applications, it's Windows 10, and it's enterprise security, and it's in one SKU, one price. Okay, so if you're a small business under 300 people, you're probably paying about £10 per user per month for Office. For £15, you get the Windows 10 and you get the enterprise security. Now, I'll be honest, most people go, I've already got Windows. So they don't really care about that part of the value. And I get that. And that makes sense. You buy a laptop, it comes with Windows. That's fine. The enterprise security, though, is well worth that £5, right? Because what it will do is it lets you protect your business data on any device, whether it's your device as a company or whether it's a personal employee's device. You can protect the business data. So you can do some dead simple things, like you can make sure that if I'm using an iPhone, like I do, I have to use the Outlook app, the official Microsoft Outlook app. I can't use the built-in mail client from Apple. I can turn that on with something called conditional access. So I can make sure I can only use the Outlook app. Now, why is that useful? If I'm using the Outlook app, I can then put a policy on that says, you know what, even if the phone hasn't got a PIN or a Face ID or any of those types of things, I can make sure Outlook does. So the phone might be unlocked. Someone finds it in the street, the phone's unlocked. They go into Outlook to look at some of my business data. It needs a PIN or it needs a Face ID. I can force that just on that one application. I can make sure that you can't copy and paste into other apps. So you can't take something out of your business email and paste it into a personal email or paste it into notes on the phone. Can't do any of that. We're protecting the business data that way. If the person leaves the business, we don't forget to wipe the data off their phone or any of that type of stuff, because it's not a corporate phone. We just disable their account. Those apps are useless. So any of that business data that is on personal devices, we can secure it, and we can set policies without having to manage that device. Because no one wants my personal iPhone, for example. I don't want it managing by a business. Yeah, it's my phone. Sure. But I don't mind getting access to my emails or Teams or messages or things like that on it, because it's more convenient than carrying around two phones sometimes. I get that. This EMS, this Enterprise Mobility and Security, lets us protect that data on phones, tablets, on personal Windows 10 devices. So again, like we are now, right? Everyone's working from home. If my corporate machine dies, I could have the ability to pick up a personal device, log into Windows, log into Office Portal, log into Office 365, install the applications. And although I'm storing business data on my personal device, this security will let us erase that data at any point later, or lock it, or protect it. So we don't control that device. It's not our Windows 10 machine, but we can secure the data on it. Now that's helpful because I'm seeing right now, it's almost impossible to get hold of laptops, right? Because we've had to shotgun everyone to go and work from home, right? So I saw a business trying to get hold of 30,000 laptops. I was like, wow, okay. So think now, all right, everyone's at home working. What if that laptop dies? What about hardware replacements? Can we afford, in a time where we've furloughed a lot of the business, so we've only got critical people working, okay, if that person's laptop dies, how do we get a replacement to them? How do we keep them working today? Jump on another laptop. It's a personal device. It doesn't matter. Get into the Office portal. All your documents are there. Your emails are there. Teams is there. You can keep communicating, but we can secure the data so that we don't ever forget it's on his personal machine. We don't have to control the machine, but we control the data that's on there. And with a flip of a switch, we can say that machine there doesn't have access to corporate information. If he saved any documents on that machine, they're now useless. Only the corporate machine works. So this is where this extra fiver comes in. Really, really handy, protecting that business data on any device, because we know people are using multiple devices every day. Yeah, they use their work devices and they use their personal devices. A lot of businesses don't like to admit that happens, but it does.
Absolutely.
So this extra fiver gives us the control to say, let's make sure they use the right apps. Let's make sure it's not a jailbroken device. We're not putting business data at risk. That's what this can do for us. So that's Microsoft 365 in a nutshell. Windows 10's in there. There's a load of great things, but like I say, customers don't see the value in the Windows 10 part. They just kind of go, I've got Windows 10. There are some extra benefits like the encryption and the policy and the Defender antivirus that we get. Stop paying for third-party antivirus. It comes in this M365 license. So there's loads of great stuff there. But what I was going to say is Microsoft have recently rebranded everything. Yeah. So what was Office 365 has now become Microsoft 365. Okay. So what you'll find now is that everything is called Microsoft 365 something. And so Office 365 Business Premium became like Microsoft Office 365, standard edition. So everything's now been relabeled. So just seeing Microsoft 365 doesn't automatically mean you're getting those enhanced security features. But what we're doing is we're putting together materials that give you a clear guide. Here's the license. Here's what you get. You get your online applications, you install on your machine applications, you get Windows 10, you get advanced security, you get a nice big mailbox, and you get Microsoft Teams. So we're putting out some materials that make it really clear as to what the value is for each of those licenses.
So for somebody watching now then, Scott, who was, we're in a period where people will probably be reflecting, focusing on and planning for the future while they've maybe got some time at home, and now that move really for the IT teams, they've had that mad rush of getting people across to home working. They've now probably got a period of reflection. What do you think these people could be doing, looking at to prepare themselves really for not necessarily moving to Microsoft 365, but at least entertaining the idea and to see if their business is a good fit for it, and what would be your advice and thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the guys are going to be seeing if systems are creaking right now. They've moved everyone to work from home. Is the VPN working? Is the bandwidth working? Are the servers able to cope with everyone not being in the office? Because of course especially in big organizations, we were all expecting people to be sat in the office, nice big high-speed network in there, either cables or Wi-Fi, all built to get you to the local servers in that office, and all of a sudden everyone's out connecting in over the VPN on the internet, and part of that infrastructure might be creaking. And I'd be looking at that going, well, what's creaking? Do we need to invest in the hardware and the systems here to upgrade it? Are any of them coming up to end of life? Because we know things like Exchange 2010 and 2013 are going end of life. Is there an opportunity, instead of investing in more on-premise hardware, more on-premise licenses, to actually take the leap and start to move into online services for Exchange or for Teams or Skype, those types of things? Because there's the hardware refresh cycle that has to come in. There's the licenses that goes with it. There's the transition that has to happen to move everything from here to there. And you know, when you look at the guys who are making the software, so I heard from the guy who runs Exchange Online, his team writes the software, and it used to be that they would write everything for the on-premise version first, and then they would write it for the cloud version. And that's switched now. So they develop everything for cloud first, and then they give you a subset of those features in the on-premise application. Now, that's not to say it's not fit for purpose, because it absolutely is. They're giving you a bulletproof enterprise email system, right, that you can sit on-premise. But what they're saying is all the new stuff, all the new advances, you're going to get it up here first in the cloud.
Yeah.
So if you want to be in that world and you want to communicate with customers in great new ways, this is where that advancement's going to happen first. And that makes sense, right? Because they're pushing everyone to the cloud environment. They also laid down a great big challenge, which was to say, look, I guarantee you our Exchange platform in Microsoft Online is better than your Exchange platform on premise.
Absolutely.
We know it is. We've got thousands and thousands of servers, and it's all automated, and we turn them off and turn them on and reboot them and scale them whenever we need to. You know, a single disk failure or server outage is not going to cause a widespread failure. So why do you want to cling on to these on-premise things? And I think, like I said earlier, if you've got your compliance reasons, you're a fintech organization or something like that, I get it. Yeah, there's good reasons why you're very cautious about protecting that data and keeping it on premise. But if you're not, and you don't have a real compliance need, I would definitely encourage people to start looking at online services. It's so easy to move people from where they are into the cloud. We've done 500 user businesses in a week doing Exchange migrations. It's easy. And that's the thing, it's very easy to do. It doesn't have to take 6, 8, 18 months or any of those kind of things. So I would definitely be looking at, how's the hardware looking? How's everything looking performance wise? Now that people are working from home, are we backing up more stuff? Are we storing more stuff online? Are we, have we got a disaster recovery plan in place? Because this thing's become more critical than ever, and everyone's connecting remotely. What happens if it blows up? What is our fallback plan? And this is where I think, having something like, Exchange Online or SharePoint for your files, that can make a big difference.
What's so people that are giving this some thought then, Scott, what would you see as being a typical approach to move into Microsoft 365? Do you think, is it advisable for a big bang approach? Do job lot together and get your cost reductions, or how do you see clients typically approaching this? Is it an email maybe or unified comms move first? How does that typically work, and what would you advise for somebody thinking about this?
Yeah, no, definitely. There's absolutely a phased kind of implementation to this. You don't just kind of throw everything at once. So the first phase is always around email and identity, because this is like the core foundation of getting everything to work properly. Yeah. So identity is massively important, because again, with this whole home working piece, my device and my username and password are really the kind of things that form the core of my identity. It's not about, well, I'm in this office and I'm coming from this IP address, and I'm sat behind this firewall, like we used to do in the on-premise world. Today, it's all around my username and password. And generally in Office 365, my Azure username and password gets me in. And then you can decide, if I'm working at home, I can have access to these resources. If I'm working on a mobile, I can have access to these resources. If I'm using a corporate device, I can have access to everything. Using a personal device, access to some things. So identity is really important. It's the number one thing to get right. These guys have already got an identity system on premise, right? They've got they've got Active Directory on premise. So the first thing we do is get that talking to the cloud. Make sure that's working properly, it's synchronizing properly, got a good basis to start with, and then it's email. Okay, if they've got an Exchange system on premise, can we make it a hybrid? Can we get it to talk with Exchange Online in a nice hybrid mode, which makes the migration really easy? If it does, we can literally then just start to tick a set of boxes and say, right, move these mailboxes to the cloud. And it just happens in the background. No extra software or anything fancy needed, no extra costs. And we immediately kind of get the benefits of that. But there are some caveats, okay? There are some drawbacks. It's difficult to kind of be in that mixed mode for a long time, where some mailboxes are over here and some mailboxes are over here. You're going to get calendar issues and meeting issues, all kinds of niggles that are going to pop up. So once we get to kind of identities working, exchanges in a good hybrid mode, we want to accelerate those mailbox moves. It's not something that you sit in a mixed mode for a long time. So we're either moving departments at a time, or or teams at a time, or locations at a time, just to make sure everyone can work together properly. But it has to be quite quick. Once you start, you need to get to the other end quite quickly. And then a lot of people think that you can then just go ahead and turn off all the stuff that's on premise. You can't. So that's another thing to get into your mind. So actually, those servers that you've got for Active Directory and Exchange, they need to stick around. So you will always need this local little presence. At least for now, you're going to need this local presence. It's doing a lot less work because all the data is actually over in the cloud for Exchange now, but you still need this management and control. So if it is Exchange 2010 or 2013, you should still plan to get to the latest version of Exchange on premise, but just have, maybe 2 servers just to do the control. You don't need all the database storage and all the email storage. So we do email and identity. After that, it's all about files. So we move personal files into OneDrive for Business, and we move team files into SharePoint Online. So it's very much me and my files, OneDrive, team files and department files, SharePoint. And then that spurs us on to the kind of communication and collaboration solutions, and that gets us talking about Microsoft Teams. Because one of the great things that Teams does for us is, it's video messaging and chat and presence and all this kind of great stuff like we're doing right now. But it's also a really nice front end for SharePoint. So whenever you share files or you set up a new group and a new channel and you start to put files in there, actually that's just created a SharePoint library in the background. You don't see it, you don't know it, you don't see any of the complexity. But as soon as we start doing OneDrive and SharePoint, it quickly moves into Teams, because it's, well, how do we share files and how do we work on some things at the same time with one another, and how do we collaborate really efficiently? So email and identity, files and data, Teams, and then somewhere along there, definitely not at the end, but somewhere along there, we have to address security and just make sure that we are putting in the right policies, around data and access control, around leakage prevention, all this kind of stuff, looking at the new advanced features that we've now got in 365 to lay that security piece on top. And we can't forget bringing everyone along for the ride, right? Yeah. Because if people are not trained to use this stuff properly, then it's not a good IT project. Yeah, we've done something technically great, but the entire business doesn't know how to use it. It kind of failed as an IT project. So we have to make sure that there's a good user adoption story in there somewhere. We've got to be telling people nice and early, hey, we're moving you to Exchange Online, or we're going to be rolling out Teams. Got to get those communications out, get people interested, understanding, got to get some training going. I like this concept of building like little digital disruptors. So building individuals or reps within teams who've been well trained. They understand how to work in modern workplace. So SharePoint, OneDrive, Outlook, Teams, they know all that stuff. They've been trained really well, not just techie people, but good business managers or team leaders, people that are go-to people in the organization. We train them really well because they can become this little hub of knowledge. So as we roll this stuff out and we give access to training plans, or we do classroom training, whatever we do with the mass of everyone to take them along, they've always got someone local to them that's kind of this digital disruptor, someone they can really turn to for advice. That gives you a good strategy then for rolling out.
Yeah, I mean, I think for staff it's obviously quite a personal thing, isn't it, that their environment's changing. So I think it's a great point, really. It's absolutely an educational piece as much as an IT project to really get the most out of this.
Yeah, no, and it can be really emotive as well. I've heard of people literally in tears because their IT systems changed. They don't know how to do things like they used to. The buttons are all in different places, and genuinely in tears because they're the exec assistant to a partner in a legal firm, and the partner wants something now. And this person's just terrified of not being able to do something quickly and feeling like they're out of touch, with the technology, and feeling like they're kind of getting pushed aside by it. And we don't want anyone to be there. I don't think that's right at all. And I think that situation can be exacerbated by where we are now, with this remote working situation.
Yeah.
People are isolated. I know we try and keep in touch, and people are doing, Zoom calls for their, virtual pubs and all this kind of great stuff. But I think people are isolated. And so where you might just shout across and say, hey, how do you do that thing in Excel? I can't remember. People are less likely to do that now. And so maybe they're more likely to struggle a bit longer and put themselves under more pressure because they don't know how to use the tools. So I think it's really important to have like a community feel of, a forum, places that they can go and ask, like these digital disruptors, but also access to just some online training, some portal they can go and get quick hints and tips, anything like that, going to make their life easier. And again, there's some great free stuff that Microsoft will give you that you can drop into a SharePoint website. It's easy, it's like a couple of clicks, and it gives the end user somewhere to go and just get hints and tips. If you're in Teams and you don't know what to do, there's a help button right down there in the bottom corner. You click that, there's a load of videos that tell you how to get going, make calls, set up meetings. There's loads of stuff that's built in, but I think, you need to know that that's there, and that's where I think these little digital disruptor, people in the business can come in.
So there's a lot of really interesting points there, Scott. I think finally from me, is there a typical size of business that you think Microsoft Teams works best for? If you're an IT manager, director looking at Microsoft Teams now, various types of different sizes of business, does this work for everyone? Is there a niche number that this really does cost in for in particular? And what are your thoughts around size of business that look to adopt M365?
Well, so that's a great question. So Teams as it is included inside Office 365. So if you're paying for Office 365 at all, you get Teams, right? And inside Teams, you get, the chat and the instant messaging, you get the voice and video calling internally and externally, right? So we work in different organizations, we can collaborate, it's seamless. There's no cost for any of this stuff. It's not like where you might have, say, GoToMeeting or like a Zoom Enterprise plan or any of those things where you have to pay for this high quality video calling. This is just built in. So if you're already paying for Office 365, this is here. If you want to add telephony to it, so the ability to actually make and receive PSTN calls, then there are additional costs. And I think very much depending on the size of your business and the complexity of your business will determine whether or not it's a good fit for voice calling. So if you are, a contact center, you're British Gas and you run a big inbound contact center, the built-in features of the telephony system here in Teams is probably not a good fit for you and your contact center. Yeah. You're going to need a robust enterprise contact center that you can still kind of bolt into Teams by using, a good IP partner who does the telephony and does the contact center piece for you. Yeah. But you're not going to use the built-in telephony system. And so that's where I would say when you get to large, either you need call recording, contact center, compliant type features around your telephony. Teams is a great base for internal communications. Those external things, you're going to want to add something else to it. So that's where the additional cost comes in. But for this functionality that we get right here, this works for everybody. If you're a small, tiny business, and I've put this in for people who are 3 and 4 people in their business, and they use it for everything, voice calls, video calls, telephone calls, the whole lot. Right through to small service providers, 20, 30 people in their business, they run their contact center through it. The whole thing just works. And then, we're rolling it out actively for 2,000 and 3,000 seat businesses right now. And they're loving it. They absolutely love this. They don't have any contact center. They've got people all around the world. And this native behavior, just be able to drop in, one username and password gets them access to everything. They can share files and folders, collaborate on things in different time zones. Just works. It's really, really good. There has been a business again that I worked with that was in fintech. They were very, very precious around their documents and document security, and so they did not want people storing documents inside Teams because Teams would natively use SharePoint Online, and they weren't ready for their documents to sit in SharePoint Online, right? They wanted it to stay on premise. Again, that's possible. We were able to set it up so they could use the messaging, the presence, the video calling, but files would not be stored in SharePoint Online.
Okay.
So we can tailor it and we can lock down the security that way. So there's a lot of controls. People get especially the IT guys, they get very scared of this idea that people can set up their own groups and their own channels, and they can invite people. They can invite people from outside the organization. What about data security? The good news is those are all valid concerns, right? I don't mean to be disparaging. Those are all really valid concerns. The good news is the controls are here for you to be able to lock those down. And it's quite friendly to use. It's not like having to be a fancy SharePoint admin. There's a few clicks, a few buttons, there's some recommended guidance on how to set it up, but it's very easy to control. So I think Teams is a great fit for everybody, and again, people are kind of jumping into Zoom. Even the Cabinet Office have been using Zoom. We've seen that, in social media, because it's easy. You get in, you join, you've got loads of people in a video meeting. We want this kind of, face-to-face communication. I think if I remember my customer service training from 20 odd years ago, I think 70% of communication is non-verbal, right? So it's all about being able to see the person, and that's what systems like this bring. I think it's really important. And one of the little differences that I noticed moving from Skype to Teams, in Skype, when you joined a meeting, it was kind of video was optional. In Teams, kind of video is on by default, and you almost have to turn it off because they're trying to encourage you to go, hey, we want to see each other. It doesn't matter if you haven't done your hair. It's just about seeing you, so that we can have that interaction.
Absolutely. No, that's been really, really useful. So, I mean, thank you for your time, Scott. I think obviously what I'd take from today in summary is really Microsoft 365 fits everyone, fits all businesses. It's about tailoring that package. There's a lot of people that are already paying for a lot of this and not getting the full benefits of the solution. So yeah, thank you. That's been really useful. And if anybody would like to know anything more, please get in touch.
Great stuff. All right, great to chat with you today.
Thanks, Scott.
Cheers.